The ambition didn't appear overnight. It grew out of a simple comparison that seemed almost too obvious to question. China had once been a low-cost manufacturing base, struggling with infrastructure gaps and limited industrial capacity. Decades later, it stood at the center of global production, controlling supply chains that stretched across continents. That transformation became the blueprint many believed India could follow. After taking office in 2014, Narendra Modi set a clear numerical target: push manufacturing beyond 25% of GDP and generate 100 million jobs. The logic was straightforward. Industrial growth would absorb labor, strengthen exports, and reduce dependence on imports. If another Asian giant had done it, India believed it could do the same. Then global politics created what looked like the perfect opening. During Donald Trump's first term, tensions between the United States and China escalated into a full-scale trade conflict. Tariffs rose, supply chains came under pressure. Companies that had spent decades building operations in China suddenly started looking for alternatives. India positioned itself as the answer. The message was direct: move production here, reduce exposure to China, and gain access to a massive domestic market at the same time. For multinational corporations, it sounded like a strategic hedge. For India, it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity. Momentum built quickly. Major global names began exploring the shift. Apple expanded its manufacturing footprint. Tesla evaluated entry strategies. Domestic giants aligned themselves with the broader vision. Headlines multiplied, each one reinforcing the same idea. Global manufacturing was on the move, and India was the destination. Then came the centerpiece of the entire strategy. In 2021, the government introduced the Production-Linked Incentive Program, known as PLI. This wasn't a minor policy adjustment. It was designed as a financial engine powerful enough to reshape industrial behavior at scale. 14 sectors were targeted: electronics, pharmaceuticals, automobiles, textiles, aviation, and more. The mechanism was simple but aggressive. Companies that met specific production targets would receive direct cash incentives from the government. The promise behind it was massive. A total of $23 billion was allocated, not for infrastructure, not for long-term development, but as immediate performance-based rewards designed to pull global manufacturers into India's ecosystem. The expectation was clear: factories would rise, production would surge, and supply chains would gradually relocate. And for a moment, it looked like it was working. Roughly 750 companies signed on. Agreements were announced at a rapid pace. Domestic media painted a picture of industrial migration already underway, with the Ganges River Basin being described as the next global manufacturing corridor. There was a growing belief that the shift had already begun, that China's dominance was finally being challenged in a meaningful way. But beneath the surface, the structure holding all of this together depended on one critical assumption: that incentives alone could replicate what took another country decades to build. And that assumption would soon face its first real test. The structure of the plan looked solid on paper. Targets were defined, sectors were selected, incentives were tied directly to output. Everything pointed toward a system built to reward performance and accelerate growth. But execution started exposing cracks almost immediately. To qualify for payouts under the PLI scheme, companies had to hit specific production benchmarks within strict timelines. That condition seemed reasonable until reality slowed everything down. Supply chains didn't adjust overnight. Factory construction faced delays. Equipment installation took longer than expected. Progress began to fall behind schedule. By October 2024, participating firms had reached only 37% of their required production targets. That gap wasn't small. It signaled that the majority of companies were nowhere near unlocking the financial support they had been promised. And without hitting those targets, the incentives stayed out of reach. Out of the $23 billion announced, only $1.73 billion had actually been paid. Less than 8% of the total budget. The number alone told a deeper story. The system designed to attract manufacturers was, well, barely distributing the rewards meant to sustain them. For many companies, this wasn't just a delay. It became a cash flow problem. Factories had been planned around expected subsidies. Investments were made with those incentives in mind. When the money didn't arrive, operations tightened. Expansion slowed. In some cases, entire projects stalled. Then came an even more revealing detail. Nearly 94% of the dispersed funds went into just two sectors, pharmaceuticals and mobile phone manufacturing. On the surface, that might seem like focused investment, but in reality, it exposed a dependency problem. Both industries relied heavily on external inputs, especially from China. Pharmaceutical production depended on imported raw materials. Mobile phone assembly required components, chips, and technical support sourced from outside India. So while the policy aimed to reduce reliance, it ended up strengthening connections in the very areas it targeted. The imbalance created a feedback loop. Industries receiving the most support were the same ones least capable of operating independently. That meant even successful output increases didn't translate into true industrial self-sufficiency. Meanwhile, other sectors struggled quietly. Steel, textiles, and solar manufacturing, industries with the potential to anchor long-term industrial growth, began falling behind. Projects slowed. Some never moved beyond the planning stage. Without consistent incentives or clear timelines, momentum faded. Inside India, criticism started to surface. One academic, Dar, raised a blunt question during a media interview. If a large-scale plan like this couldn't deliver results, what confidence remained for future initiatives? That question reflected a broader concern. The issue wasn't just underperformance. It was whether the entire model, subsidy-driven industrial growth, could function under the conditions India was operating in. And as delays turned into setbacks, the gap between expectation and reality kept widening. What had been announced as a fast-track transformation began to look increasingly like a system struggling to keep itself moving. By early 2025, the pressure that had been building quietly inside the system finally became impossible to ignore. The numbers told the story with brutal clarity. Instead of rising toward the 25% target, manufacturing's share of GDP moved in the opposite direction, falling from 15.4% to 14.3%. At the same time, the workforce shrank. More than 15 million workers disappeared from the manufacturing sector. Jobs that were meant to absorb labor at scale simply never materialized. For a plan built around employment generation, that reversal cut directly against its core purpose. Then came the collapse at the company level. Across just 4 years, over 2,000 contracted firms began pulling back, scaling down, or exiting entirely. Some left quietly. Others left behind unfinished projects, idle machinery, and facilities that never reached full operation. One example captured the situation clearly. A major Apple supplier waited 18 months for subsidy approvals that never came. During that time, equipment worth $400 million sat unused. Eventually, the company dismantled and removed it. The delay didn't just slow production, it erased the entire investment.